Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very excited to be here to speak to you this evening. Today, inshallah, I'm going to be speaking on becoming the best version of you. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So, what does this even mean to be the best version of you, right? When we think of that, I want each and every one of you to reflect on what the meaning of that is to you. Because this talk, I don't want you to take it as just a talk or a lecture or something that you kind of take in, but I want each and every one of you to reflect inward. This is kind of like an exercise. It's kind of like a workshop, as the sister mentioned. It really takes a lot of looking inside of you and taking from this talk what it means for you as an individual. So what does it mean to become the best version of yourself? So each and every one of us, we're individuals, right? We have certain characteristics, certain qualities, certain things about us that are positive, negative. We have some weaknesses, etc. Oftentimes there are so many of us that are walking the face of this earth and we're not reaching our full potential. We aren't living up to what we could be, right? Like we could be so much more. And so it's really about figuring out what is holding us back. What is holding me back from not reaching my full potential, from not succeeding at whatever I need to succeed, from not reaching my goals, from not being happy or having an amazing relationship with the people in my life. So what is it that's holding me back? So we're gonna go through during this talk 5 things that are very essential for us. So if you have notebooks, if you have pens, I would definitely recommend taking them out because we're gonna be doing a lot of work here, okay? It's not just listening, but it's a lot of work and I hope, inshallah, that you take this back with you. So why do you even want to become the best version of yourself? You know, so many of us are just comfortable in being the way that we are. And it's important for us, you know, as Muslims to realize that this is a huge part of our tradition, right? It's to reach our full potential. We're always reaching for something. We're striving for Jannah. We're striving for that paradise. We're working hard to have success in this life and the next. So that's our goal, right? Is that I always want to achieve higher and aim higher. And even psychology tells us that, even research tells us that, you know, if you're aiming higher, you may reach there, and we'd hope that you'd reach there, but, you know, even if you fall short, at least you aimed high, right? And so many of us, we may have these internal, you know, struggles or barriers that hold us back from really reaching what we could reach, right? From really succeeding in the way that we can. So becoming the best version of ourselves really starts with a bit of hope. So I want to start with that, is that we have the hope in I can improve, I can get better, I can improve my situation, I can you know, get that college degree, I can have a happy home, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. And it's really about you individually to see what it is that you're aiming for. A lot of times it's, I want to have more patience. I want to control my anger. I want to, you know, be thankful for everything that I have in my life. So sometimes it is that characteristic trait that we're striving for. And sometimes we just can't attain it. And we keep falling into error. We keep falling into sin. And I just don't know what's holding me back. So it's important to have that hope that I can aim higher and I can achieve higher. And believing in yourself. And I can't express to you how important this is that you believe in yourself. Too many people are walking the earth feeling down on themselves, doubting themselves. There's a lot of self-doubt and fear and self-blame and criticism and negativity. And a lot of that is what holds us back. That I'm not able to achieve, I'm not able to surpass these barriers because I don't believe I can. And so if I don't believe I can, then how will I even Why would I even try? If I believe, okay, I won't be able to achieve this, oh, I'll never have patience, I'll never be able to control my anger, I'll never be able to pray as much as I want to pray or I aim to pray, we won't try as much. So it really affects us in our way of life as well, in our religion and our relationships and our relationship with God, our relationship with Allah. A lot of times that can be affected because, okay, if I don't believe that I'm a good believer, I might just, be lazy in my worship. I might just, take a step back. So it's important that we have that hope. We begin with, okay, I need to believe in myself, and believing that each and every one of us deserve the best. And we deserve the best mostly from ourselves, because that's where that true ability and strength and resolve lies, is within us. Too often we're worried more about what other people think of us. Am I right? Too many times. What are other people gonna think? What are other people gonna say? And it really has to be, as believers, it's what Allah thinks of me, it's what God thinks of me. But as individuals and wanting to be strengthened, wanting to achieve, it's really about what we believe about ourselves, and if we're going to be able to get to that point. So let's travel on this journey together. Let's begin, because this is the really beginning of that journey of transformation, because it's a journey. It will take traveling, it will take, running, walking, climbing, a lot of work on this journey of transformation. And what is this transformation? That self-improvement, and of course, each individual, you have different things that you're aiming for. So focus on that. What is it that you are working towards? What is your focus? What is your goal? And then this can help you. These 5 things will be able to help you on that journey of transformation. So number 1, very, very important in this becoming the best version of ourselves, is to know yourself. Know yourself. Seems pretty simple, right? But most of us actually don't know ourselves at all. Believe me, before I began my journey in therapy, I had no idea who I was. I think I started in my 20s. So I was 20, I was young, newly married, moved all the way across the country from Florida to New York, left my family, my friends, my tiny small town with hardly any Muslims, hardly any people of my color at all. It's a very different world, very different world. And I had a lot to learn, but I didn't realize how much I had to learn until I met with my therapist for the first time. And then I was able to really see that, wow, I have a lot of stuff I need to work on. I have a lot that I need to work on. There's a lot that I don't know about myself. And I'll tell you, that was such an amazing journey for me that I'm so thankful to Allah for, because it really brought me closer to Him in a lot of ways. It helped me to know Him in more ways than I could have ever imagined, because knowing yourself and knowing your weaknesses and your struggles and what's holding you back, that can really help you to advance and become closer to the Creator as well. So know yourself. That self-awareness is essential. That how do you get to know yourself, right? That's a question. How do I get to know myself? I think I know myself. So many people will say, oh, nobody knows me better than me. It's not only about your hobbies. It's not only about what you like, what you dislike, where you came from, where you grew up, the experiences that you have, but it relates to your heart, mind, and soul. Okay, so those are areas to focus on in this journey. Your heart, your mind, and your soul. So how spiritual are you? What holds you back in spirituality? What is going on in your mind? Do we actually listen to our thoughts? And I'm going to focus a lot on that today, is that inner voice. Do we know, really, do we listen to what our inner voice says? Because we each have an inner voice, right? And it says constant thoughts I forgot how many, but I read, I think it was a quote or something, and it was saying like over thousands, right? Thousands of thoughts in the day. We may even be having a conversation with somebody. You may recognize and notice you're having a conversation with somebody, yet you're having a conversation in your head, right? There's all these thoughts that are going and going and going. And if you don't recognize your inner voice, if you don't know that inner voice, how will you be able to really truly have that conversation with it? How will you be able to understand it? How will you know the effect that it's having on you? And so recognizing that inner voice is key to what it's saying. One ayah in the Quran, Allah says that it was we who created man, and we know what dark suggestions his soul makes to him. And this, of course, is the English translation. It never does justice to the Arabic, but Allah says that for we are nearer to him than his jugular vein. So Allah mentions the inner voice, the inner conversation that we have, the dark suggestions, the ideas that we get in our mind. Basically the conversation, the voice that is going on in our heads. So Allah created us, and he knows us so well, and he knows what our inner voice is saying to us. And he's closer to us than anybody could ever be closer. And I'll tell you, one time I was going through a really rough time. It was a really rough time. I was at home, something was going on in my life, and I was really sad, like really sad. I felt really dark, I had all these different thoughts in my head about negative self-worth and negative feelings about myself. And I said, you know what? I don't know what it was, subhanAllah, it was from Allah, but it was like, let me just pick up the Quran and just kind of see, like, get some peace from it, So I picked up the Quran and I opened up to this ayah. And it was really my introduction to this ayah. Now I can't do a talk without mentioning this ayah. But it gave me that comfort in that moment, that all the dark things that I'm saying to myself about my negative self-worth and how I'm nothing and nobody loves me and nobody cares about me and who am I? Who do I think I am? And so Allah was there in that moment, and he's always there, but he was reminding me that, that inner voice, I know what it's saying to you, and I'm closer than anybody. So even in feeling so lonely and distant and far, this was a reminder. This was a reminder of that inner voice, and it was a reminder back to my Creator. So it exists, and we have to listen to it. We have to listen to that inner voice, and what is it saying? Because if that inner voice is negative, if it is critical, if it is putting us down, making us feel horrible about ourselves, then it is having a huge negative impact on the way that we feel, and the way that we act, and the way that we behave. So if you recognize, the point that I'm talking about is that you have to know yourself, right? You have to recognize that inner voice. So if that inner voice is critical, which so many of us have a critical inner voice. I don't think I've met anybody who has, like 100% amazing and compassionate voice. That's what we're trying to get to, but it's really about recognizing if it's critical and transforming it, because that's the voice that we want to have, is the one that is compassionate, the one that is loving and understanding and forgiving. So how do we get to know ourselves? And the first thing I'll always say to everyone is therapy, right? And it's not only because I am a therapist, but it's because I've been through it as well, and I believe in it, right? Like, I believe in the power of therapy. And I also believe in vulnerability, being able to open up about yourself and your own journey and your own struggles, because that's the way that we'll be connected. And that's the way that we'll feel closer to each other. That if I open up about, I really had this dark moment, maybe somebody out there will feel comfortable opening up about it. Like, hey, I had a dark moment too. Or, I have those negative thoughts too. And so when we as a community can be more vulnerable and more open about these topics, we can help each other out in so many ways. People will feel less scared to open up about it. People will be less scared about reaching out for help because it's normal. You know, it's normal to have all of these emotions and dark feelings and depressive thoughts and anxious thoughts, and it's perfectly okay and good to reach out for help. So therapy is that place of where you can go on a journey of self-discovery and figure out who you are, learn who you are, so you can work on that voice. Alhamdulillah, I have come a long way. I have a long way to go. But therapy was one of those places where I was able to open up about my voice, recognize how critical it was, severely critical, and work on ways to transform it, to work on it so that it is compassionate, so that it is, loving and understanding and forgiving. And so that I can help the people who sit with me and express to me their negative inner voices. And so I can give them the tools to transform that. Another way to get to know yourself, there's so much information out there. We all have the phones, there's so much information that we get to. There are books, there are articles, there's different exercises that you can take, and it's really about having the desire, knowing that it's so important, and then reaching out to learn about yourself. So is that inner voice critical? And a way that you can tell is just to look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Look at yourself. What are the thoughts that come to mind about you? Are they positive thoughts? Are they negative thoughts? Do you immediately look at, that one pimple that you got on your face, or that one thing on your body that you dislike, and you're ignoring everything else that's great, right? So what is it? Or is it even deeper? Do we look in the mirror and we see, you're worthless, or nobody cares about you. This is why you're not married. This is why, you're always arguing with your spouse. So what are those thoughts, right? Those are pretty negative, right? And when you hear me say it, you're like, wow, that's really harsh. But we actually have these thoughts about ourselves. And we may never utter them out loud. So just imagine if they're in our minds and we don't talk to anybody about them. They just sit in our minds and they fester and they grow and they strengthen, right? Because the minds are, subhanAllah, they're so powerful, right? So if we just leave something in our minds, it has the power to go in all different kinds of directions until we take that thought out and we do something about it. And I'll be talking about that. One thing I want to talk about when it comes to that critical inner voice is shame, right? Because this shame is toxic, and that's an extremely negative and critical thought that we have about ourselves. Shame is taking maybe something that we did wrong, or an action, a mistake, and we kind of attribute it to who we are and our character. So there's shame versus guilt. Guilt is, I did something wrong. I made a mistake. I committed an error. I committed a sin. Shame is saying, I'm bad. I'm a mistake. I'm horrible. Okay, so shame is taking that guilt to an extreme and viewing yourself as just bad or negative, or it's basically guilt to an extreme. And so that's something to really pay attention to when you're listening to that inner voice. And definitely it's about sitting in silence so you can actually hear what the voice is saying, right? And taking that time to sit in silence to hear it. Try to recognize shame, because it's very toxic and it can cause a lot of damage. Being able to recognize it and identify it, that's that first step. So number 2, so the first one is what? Know yourself, right? Number 2 is be compassionate to you. That's the second point. That there's a famous quote that no one deserves your love more than you. So you giving your love to you is so essential. And the author who has really brought about the topic of self-compassion is Dr. Kristen Neff, so you can look into her work. She talks about shame and guilt and low self-worth and how all of these things are so powerful. And they can really lead somebody to even, to feel horrible about themselves and then to act in those ways based on that thinking, based on that negative thinking. And so, there's a lot of work when it comes to self-compassion, but it's really about embracing your imperfections. When you make a mistake, being kind to yourself, being forgiving. It doesn't mean you just allow yourself to make mistakes and commit sin and then everything's going to be okay and you're being all positive. No, it's admitting, right, and making up for the mistake, asking for forgiveness. But it's not about like putting yourself, like nailing yourself into the ground or like putting yourself into the ground. It's really about lifting yourself up, because when you're given that forgiveness, when you're given that compassion, that's when you can, move forward. So different ways that you can, listen to your voice and then actively work towards self-compassion. One of the ways is through journaling. And when I first tell people about journaling, they think they have to just write everything about their day. It's today I did this and yesterday I did this. And that's not the type of journaling that this is. This is basically writing down your critical thoughts, those critical thoughts of like criticism and putting you down and blaming you, the self-blaming thoughts, the self-loathing thoughts. So you're writing them down. And what does that do? That makes you realize and recognize what they are. And then you're writing down next to it the compassionate thought. Right? The compassionate thought next to it. I did have bookmarks in here, but my little one got to the book and they're all mixed up. So basically it's writing down your critical thought, like I am a failure. Okay? So you get that thought, you write it down. I'm a failure. And then next to it, it's the thoughts that challenge that thinking. I do work hard, and I try my best, and I may not achieve everything that I want to achieve, but I am successful at so many things. And so what does that do? That challenges that extremely critical voice, and it gives proof of the otherwise, right? And I do a lot of this work with a lot of parents too, because I see individuals, couples, and families. And I think of parents when I think of critical thoughts, because we can kind of relate to that. As a mom of 4 myself, it's like constant negative thoughts about like I'm messing up my kids, I'm a horrible mom, I'm not spending enough time with them, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So there's so many critical thoughts, right? And I see some smiles in the audience, so maybe I related to some of you. And so it's like, oh my goodness, and it's like, okay, I'm a horrible mom. Like seriously, like you're the one who gets up and cooks and cleans and worries about your kid and makes dua for them constantly. And how could you say you're a horrible mom, right? So it's that critical thought and recognizing it because it's there. It's a fact that yes, I do have these critical thoughts. I do have these negative thoughts. Again, no shame. So that doesn't mean you're a bad person if you're having negative thoughts. It's normal. Acceptance, right? That's the first thing. It's like accepting it. I have these negative thoughts. Then you write down challenging it. I'm a great mom, or I'm a great dad, and I do these things for my kids. I may not achieve perfection, which is what we're all trying to achieve, but I've done this and this and this and this, and that's proof that I'm a great parent. So that's what you want to do. And I tell my clients too, like just mark out that critical thought, right? Just put an X on it or put a line through it, and just mark it out. And I know this is probably a topic for a longer discussion, but there's different ways to see your inner voice, and what has helped me personally, and it may help you, that's why I want to share it, is to see your inner voice as your inner child. Because there's a lot of things that we've gone through growing up. There's a lot of things that we went through in childhood. And so a lot of times the negative voice is a scared inner child, okay? So sometimes I'll get the thought of like unlovable or failure or unimportant, nobody cares about you. And so when I'm able to see that as like a scared, lonely child, I'm able to be compassionate to myself, right? Because I'm being compassionate to the child. We're being compassionate to the little kid. It's like, no, you are loved. You know, you are important. You do matter. You see the smile on my face from that, and how much of an effect the compassionate voice can have on you, especially when you pinpoint your critical thoughts and you challenge those. You know, often it relates to being unlovable, being a failure, not being good enough. That's a huge one. And so when you're able to challenge those and give yourself that compassionate voice, it can be really powerful. And so the journaling and then the mantras, and I kind of said it already, you figure out what's a powerful statement that challenges your critical inner voice, and you say that to yourself out loud over and over and over again. You can also write it on posters in your room, write it on the mirror. That's what I do. I'll write a message every day. I haven't done it in a while, so inshallah I'm going to continue. But writing a message every day on the mirror of, you know, you are loved, you are good enough, you are enough. And so surround yourself with the positive, compassionate, loving voice so you drown out the negative. Because imagine if you're hearing 100 times a day that you're a failure, and then you meet with your best friend and she's like, oh, you're such a success, or he says, you know, you're amazing, and then you heard that 100 times in your head, and this person just said it once. Which one is going to be more powerful? And so you being your own best friend, you being your biggest advocate, your biggest support, you saying it 100 times to yourself, the compassionate voice, the loving voice, the voice that believes in you and believes you can achieve, that voice being more powerful. So surround yourself with positive messages. Another way to increase that compassionate side is to engage in self-care. So many of us, we don't take care of ourselves. We take care of everybody around us, right? We're worried about everybody around us. And it's understandable, but it's so essential that we do things for us. Do things for you. Take care of you physically, you know, exercising, eating right, you know, emotionally, listening to your emotions, hearing yourself out, reaching out to somebody to express yourself, etc. Spiritually, doing the things that uplift you spiritually, taking care of you. Another thing is, take the action that is the opposite of the critical inner voice, okay? Just immediately act in a way that is the opposite. An example that I had, was it yesterday or the day before? I don't know when it was, but I basically had something like a piece of paper. It was like a project that I needed to do, and it was sitting there on the desk. So it's sitting there for like a couple of weeks. Like I was procrastinating. So any procrastinators in here? Yeah? Okay. So I feel a little better about myself. So I put it here on the table. It was on the table. I saw it, and the voice said, oh, you're such a procrastinator. Like, you're never going to get that done. You know, just go eat a bag of chips. You know, it was just like making it worse, right? Because a lot of it is self-sabotage. And then immediately I was like, no. So I challenged that voice, picked it up, and just started working on it. That's it. Even though I didn't want to, even though I wanted to procrastinate even more, it was just like, if I walk away, it's going to happen the next time I look at the paper. It's going to constantly happen again. So that doesn't always happen, but I was able to kind of pick it up and just do the project, right? So try to take the action that's the opposite of that. If you get a thought that, nobody cares about you, nobody's reaching out to you, nobody loves you, you're nothing, you're scum, all these different kinds of thoughts, pick up the phone and call somebody who loves you, or go immediately to speak to somebody who does care about you. That challenges it. See? You tell your inner voice, see, you're wrong. Like, this person loves me, this person cares about me. So doing the action that immediately challenges that. Number 3 is discover your vision. Discover your purpose. What is your foundation? What do you stand on? Who is the real you? So because we care about what people think, we have all kinds of masks that we wear. We have all kinds of fake parts of ourselves. And so it's about who is the real you. You want to know the real you and to really decide who you get to be. I try to do this with my older kids, my teens, is to ask them, because a lot of parenting is asking instead of telling. Like, we make the mistake of constantly telling and lecturing, and we think that we only have this amount of time with the kids, so I have to keep telling them every single thing that I know and I've learned throughout my entire life for them to learn and them to listen. Okay, I have 10 seconds with my teen. How many, ayat can I get into their head? How many things can I get into them? And so we tend to talk a lot as parents. So, a really good thing, and I try to teach parents is, and so many, even teachers, they know this, is that you ask, you inquire, you get them to think about the answer, right? So I try to do this with my kids, my older ones especially. The younger two are a little too little, but the older ones, kind of asking them, they tell me a story, my friends were doing this is what they were talking about, this is whatever. And then, I'll ask, is that you? Is that something that you would want to do? Is that, part of who you are and part of your character? So it gets them to really think about who they are, and so that they can really go back to what they really believe in. And that's so important for us, as adults. What do we stand on? What are our values? And this is a whole nother talk as well about, and I think I mentioned it later on, but being proactive instead of reactive. And so sometimes when somebody says something and it makes us angry or makes us upset, we react. And so the trick is to, when something happens, to think about how we want to respond, and then to choose how we want to respond based on our principles and values, based on what we believe, instead of on how I feel in the moment. So you said something, it made me angry, I'm gonna yell, I'm gonna scream, I'm gonna say all this. But is that who I am? Is that who I want to be? Do I want to be the angry spouse? Do I want to be the nagging spouse? Is this who I really want to be? Is this who I am? Do I want to be that loving, caring, compassionate person in this relationship, or even, on my own? So it's choosing how we want to be based on our values, based on that foundation. If we don't know what that foundation is, then we won't know how we're going to act, how we're going to respond. So Allah says in the Quran, Surah 29, Ayah 69, and those who strive in our cause will certainly guide them to our paths. Indeed, Allah is with those who do good. So Allah talks about the muhsineen, right? The people who excel, who do things with ihsan, who go above and beyond, right? In many, many places in the Quran that's mentioned, right? The people who are of the excellent character and who do things and treat others with excellence. And so this is part of that foundation, right? Is that we are those who strive for the highest, the best. That I don't just want to be okay, or I don't just want to be good. I want to be the best of the best. And so if we're striving for that, then it's about, we'll reach that. So doing good to others and to ourselves, right? That being part of our purpose. It's not only about giving to others, but to ourselves as well. So when we know our principles and values, we can consciously choose how we want to react in a situation. See, I knew I put it in here. Be proactive instead of reactive. So who is the real you? It kind of goes back to knowing yourself, right? Everything goes back to that. Write down your qualities. Write it down. It's so important to write things down. We think we have everything up here, and then we get confused, or we forget things, and we wonder why we forget. So write down, what are your qualities? What are things that you're good at? What are your goals in life? What are you striving and hoping to achieve? What is your vision for your life, and not what other people expect from you? Number 4 is to learn and grow. To learn and to grow. So we know in the Quran it says that indeed he succeeds who purifies his own self. So we're striving for that purification. We're striving for being better. And this is, again, mind, body, and soul. These are the different ways in which we can grow. So throughout our lives, and this is how we can become that best version of ourselves, is taking every single opportunity to learn and to grow, right? Sometimes like the speaking engagements or teaching, opportunities, a lot of times I'm like, I want to listen to people, right? And I want to learn from people. But I learn so much from talking and from studying and from preparing. So I see it as an opportunity, right? Even for me to learn and to grow and to go over this material. And saying all of this to you is saying it to me first, right? Telling all of you to be compassionate to you, I'm saying it to myself. And so it's strengthening me and it's strengthening you. And it's about seeing that throughout our lives, is taking every opportunity that I can to grow, to be better, to learn, to excel. So many people will come to me, as a therapist, of course, with issues and with problems that they're dealing with. And we all have so much that we're dealing with. We have so much on our plate, so much that we're struggling through. And there's things that we can do for ourselves to help ourselves and to learn about that situation. People will say, like, I'm dealing with this issue, what should I do? Have you researched it? Have you looked online for ways that can help you to deal with this? Have you gone to the library and taken out a book, or gone on Amazon, everything's on Amazon, right? And ordered a book that relates to your topic that you're struggling with? And so many times it's no. I've just been dealing with it. How long have you been dealing with it? 6 months, a year, 6 years. When it comes to couples, forget it, it's like 16 years. Like when I ask them, when did this problem start? Like 14 years. Why not start therapy 14 years ago? Why wait 14 years? But of course, there's so many things that are involved in that. There's so much stigma. There's so many misconceptions and misunderstanding about it. But anyways, getting back to this is like, we can always learn more about our situation to improve, right? Whether it's a struggle in a relationship, whether it's your wife, your husband, your child, your mother-in-law, no matter who it is, right? It's about, we can always learn more about it or find out ways that I can improve this relationship and I can make things better. So take every opportunity to gain more skills, to enhance your knowledge about yourself, about relationships, about whatever you're struggling with. An example is if we're given an illness, if we're told by a doctor that you have cancer, and may Allah protect us from that and everybody who's going through an illness. But it's about, if we're told there's so many different types of cancer, we would look it up, right? We would do the research. What is this cancer? What is it about? What do I need to do? How do I need to eat better or exercise better, or what medicines do I need to take? We'd be researching everything. So why not when it comes to a difficulty that we're struggling with? Maybe a relationship, right? Maybe we're having an argument with a loved one. We haven't spoken to them in so long. why not research that on how to be better, how to improve the relationship, and you know, how to kind of fix things. So you never know when opportunities are going to fall into your lap as well. So take them. One thing about hardship and failure and difficult circumstances, we grow from them, right? We learn from them. And that's an important perspective to have as well, is that when I go through a hardship, when I go through a difficulty, it's about recognizing that there's a lesson in it, right? There's a lesson in it. There's something that I'm supposed to learn. So even asking that question to Allah, like, help me to learn, you know, what I'm supposed to learn from this situation. Help me to grow from it. And so recognizing the different things that we can do to grow from it. And the last thing in this, and then I'll speed up a bit, is surround yourself with great people. The people who will help you to grow emotionally, spiritually, and physically. My teacher used to say, when you find that person, you know, that you admire, you look up to, they have, you know, good character, they have, you know, they're good in their deen, in their relationship to Allah, and all of this, stick to them like glue, she used to say. Like, stick to them like glue, because you want to get from them, right, those good qualities and, you know, blessings and things like that. So surround yourself with positive people. So the last one is number 5, which is embody gratitude. And it's not just practicing gratitude, it's not just having an attitude of gratitude, but it's embodying it. That no matter what situation you're in, that there's always light within the darkness. There's always ease within the hardship, right? That inna ma'al usri yusra, right? That there's always that yusr, that ease within the hardship. So no matter how dark the situation, there's always something to be grateful for. And believe me, this is it's interesting because I'm ending with it, but it's really the starting step, right? It's the start. And this is what I do when I work with my clients as well. It's any difficult relationship, even your relationship with yourself. What do you have to be grateful for? Even in a relationship, whether it's your spouse or your in-laws or your children or a friend or a teacher, anybody that you're having trouble with, like in that relationship, what do you have to be grateful for? What do you admire about this person? What do you love about this person? So focusing on that gratitude. One famous quote is that as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. And so it's not just saying thank you or appreciating yourself or thanking somebody else, but it's embodying that, right? In our heart, on our tongues, and in our actions. That being grateful for my current state and being grateful for whatever it is that I'm going through. And believe me, that's going to be the stronghold, right? That even if you feel like you have nothing to hold on to, there's always that something, right? And Allah tells us that if we were to count the blessings, right, we'd never be able to count them. If we were to sit down and write down everything that He's given us, we'd never be able to finish. We'd constantly be going on and on and on and on. And yet we are so negative. And yet we are so ungrateful. And yet we focus on the negative, right? And I don't want to get into shaming or anything, right? Yes, we can be ungrateful, but we can move into gratitude, right? And we can choose gratitude, that I choose gratitude today. Make a list, you know, every day, just 3 things or 5 things that you're grateful for. Believe me, I did this and I looked at the list a year later. Again, procrastinator, so I didn't write it every day. It was like a year later I looked at it and I was like, wow, like even just reading the list made me grateful. Like it reminded me of things I had to be grateful for. It reminded me of something to make me smile. That wow, like even though, and now I'll just do it if I'm having a bad day or if I'm feeling down, you know, I'll just go to that gratitude list and it's just like, you know, you just fill up with gratitude and there's no way that you can stay in that negative state. So gratitude, of course, in Islam as well, emphasized over and over and over again is being grateful to our Creator, being grateful to others, and appreciating ourselves. So just ending off here, Gratitude is going to be that stronghold. It's going to help us individually and in our relationships as well. And just going over these 5 things, right? Know yourself, be compassionate to you, discover your vision and purpose, learn and grow, and embody gratitude. The place that we can really learn about ourselves and grow, and I'll say it over and over again, a beautiful place to learn it, and it's not always beautiful, a lot of times it's tough, is in therapy. It's extremely valuable. It's an empowering process to enable you to transform your life for the better. And as a community, we need to be able to talk about it more. We need to open up about it more. Is that there are real issues that we are not facing. You know, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's a lot of trauma. You know, and I did a lot of training in trauma. And believe me, every single person that's walking the earth, you know, there's a story that they can tell, you know, of something that they have been through that has negatively impacted them. And so if we're not facing those, if we're not talking about them, if we're shoving them under the rug, if we say, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that, then we're creating more trauma. And we're strengthening that, because trauma and these mental illnesses and these struggles, they thrive on silence. And so what we have to do is we have to open up about them more. We have to talk about them. We have to bring them out into the open so that we can strengthen each other, to be comfortable enough to open up about these topics, to reach out for help when we need it. Because therapy is not only for severe issues or severe cases, or every single person can benefit from therapy. Every single person. My kids, my friends, they'll hear it from me. I say everybody needs therapy, you know, because we all do, and you can really benefit from it. So I hope that this, you know, inshallah, opened up your minds, helped you to see the importance of knowing yourself and loving yourself, because so much of what holds us back is the negative, critical inner voice that we have. And I do have this book today, if anybody wants to look through it. It's Conquer Your Critical Inner Voice. And so it has a lot of exercises. It has a lot of things that you can do. It's kind of like a journal that you can look through, and that can help you to conquer that critical inner voice, because that's really the key. That will empower you, and that will strengthen you to achieve and become the best version of yourselves. So thank you so much. I will turn the live video off, and inshallah we'll have time for question and answer, inshallah.